Today we begin our fourth day of class with more of Avicenna. We've already seen in Avicenna, Book 6, Chapter 2, two definitions of creation, and we're going to continue to look at that issue of creation and also the metaphysics of existence for Avicenna in Book 8 of the Metaphysics now. So, Book 8 is about existence and its attributes, according to the title, including the attributes of unity and uniqueness, that is, of the first principle. In the opening paragraphs of 8.1, Book 8, Chapter 1, Avicenna gives a précis of what is to come later, particularly what's to come in 8.3, that is, Book 8, Chapter 3. At 8.1, paragraph 6, Avicenna reasons that there cannot be an infinity of intermediate causes. If the series of causes, quote, is ordered as an infinite plurality and the extreme is not realized, then the entire infinite extreme would share in the special characteristic of intermediacy. Hence it is impossible for an aggregate of causes to exist without including an uncaused cause and a first cause. Close quote. That is, according to Avicenna, for the actual existence of something right now, some particular thing right here and now, there must be a non-infinite order series of causes to bring that thing about. Given that the thing is here in front of us as realized as a thing in the world, then there must be a cause of it. And we go back to the arguments of primary causality, which we've discussed earlier in the course, for that and trace it all the way back up. Avicenna's point here is that with regard to the intermediacy, we would be stuck there forever if there were an intermediacy involving an infinite number of causes. So, hence, it is impossible for an aggregate of causes to exist without including an uncaused cause and a first cause, according to Avicenna. After reasoning in 8.1 paragraph 7 that there can't be an infinity of intermediate causes, which I just discussed a moment ago, Avicenna concludes in paragraph 8, quote, "Thus it has become evident from all these statements that there is here a first cause. For even if that which is between the two extremes were not finite, and the extreme exists, then the extreme would be a first for what is infinite and a cause that is not cause." That is, even if somehow there were an infinity between the two, if the two extremes exist, the thing exists here now, there would still have to be then a first cause. So the two extremes would have to be there. But he doesn't really think it's possible for there to be an infinity of causes between these two. We go on. He later explains, quote, "We are not speaking here about what in its individuality, not in its specificity, is a principle, and what is accidentally, not essentially, a principle. For we allow that there are infinite causes in the past and in the future. And it is incumbent on us to show finitude in the things that are causes in their own essences. That is, in the order of essential causality, which is often portrayed as a vertical hierarchy, there must be a finitude of causes." This is the same issue that we were talking about. As I said, he's concluding here from some of his earlier discussions. I continue then. This is the state of affairs in the second of the two divisions. This after we also seek assistance from what has been said in the physics. So we take advantage of what's in the physics and the notion of Aristotle's physics that in fact there cannot be an infinite series of causes reaching back to a first cause. And so Avicenna wants to take advantage of that. In Book 8, Chapter 2, Avicenna deals with the issues of objections regarding Aristotle's physics. It's very interesting. I urge you to look at it very carefully, but for our purposes here, I skip that and proceed to 8.3, that's Book 8, Chapter 3, where Avicenna argues in detail the finitude of causes and proves the existence of the first cause. Yes, so it's here in 8.3 that Avicenna proves the existence of the first cause, or as he would also say, that would be God. At 8.3, paragraph 5, Avicenna begins his argument for first efficient, or as we can also translate the Arabic, first efficient or agent cause. I remind you about the discussion of agent causality in 6 as well. It's quite relevant to the discussion here. So, at Book 8, Chapter 3, and paragraph 5, Avicenna begins his argument for a first efficient cause by drawing on his discussion from Book 1 on the necessary existent, and at paragraph 6, Avicenna explicitly references that discussion, writing, quote, "We have previously explained that the necessary existent is numerically 1. Everything acquires existence from another, and ultimately from, quote, the one who is in his essence one, and the existent who is in his essence an existent," close quote. Avicenna then writes the following: "This is the meaning of a thing's being created." Now note what we have here. We already saw 2 definitions in Book 6, Chapter 2, of creation. In that case, the word was ibda. And Avicenna wants to continue to explain the nature of creation here. So he provides another definition here. So this is the 3rd definition that we've seen in our study of Avicenna so far. 3rd definition of creation. Quote, "This is the meaning of a thing's being created, that is, attaining existence from another. It has absolute non-existence which it deserves in terms of itself." We see exactly that same language in Aquinas. I continue. "It is deserving of non-existence not only in terms of its form without its matter, or in terms of its matter without its form, but in its entirety." This is exactly the material Aquinas draws on for his first extended discussion of creation in the commentary and the sentences. This is key to his philosophical understanding. The quotation continues, "Hence, if its entirety is not connected with the necessitation of the being that brings about its existence, and is reckoned as a being dissociated from it, then in its entirety its non-existence becomes necessary." That is, if it's not linked to what brings about the necessity of its existence, it's separated from it in some fashion, then of course the thing's own non-existence is necessary, because it must have that link. I continue with Avicenna. "Hence, its coming into being at the hands of what brings about its existence is in its entirety. No part of it in relation to this meaning is prior in existence, neither its matter nor its form, if it possesses matter and form." Of course, Avicenna's point here is to make sure that that notion of the non-existent, which we can have a conceptual notion of, make sure that that non-existence is not existing at all. It is no thing that has the accident of non-existence attached to it. No, no, no. This is absolute creation we're talking about here, creation ex nihilo. So that was his 3rd definition of creation, and I remind you that the other 2 are in Book 6, Chapter 2, and in the Marmora translation you can find them precisely at pages 203 and 204. At 6.2, paragraph 9, on page 203 then, he writes this: "If something by virtue of its essence is a cause for the existence of something else that is permanent, then it is its permanent cause, as long as its essence exists." He's got in mind here that in the very notion of creation is continuous dependency upon the Creator. I carry on. "If the cause exists permanently, then its effect exists permanently." Notice that. Avicenna does also hold that the cause, the first cause of all, exists permanently. If that's the case, then the effect of that exists permanently. For Avicenna, then, there's no beginning in time here. The creation of things higher, it follows immediately, immediately upon the very being of the first cause. We've already seen this. Here he's applying it. I continue with Avicenna. "Such a thing among causes would then have the higher claim to causality because it prevents the absolute non-existence of the thing. It is the one that gives complete existence to the thing." Okay, so a cause by creation, what does it give to a thing? Complete existence. This is exactly the language that Aquinas will pick up on. And here's his other definition from 6.2, paragraph 9. This then, I think it's page, I have on here the slide 203, but it's actually page 204. Or no, it's continuation, pardon me, it's a continuation of 203. This then is the meaning that, for the philosophers, is termed creation. It is the giving of existence to a thing after absolute non-existence, for it belongs to the effect in itself to be non-existent and then to be, by its cause, existing. That which belongs in the thing intrinsically is more prior in essence for the mind, though not in time, than that which belongs to it from another. So the primacy here is to the foundational meaning of creation here. I wonder myself, as I look at it now, I wonder myself if this little notion about prior in essence for the mind, though not in time, may be a reference to what we find in the Liber de Causas. I have to think about that further. It's an interesting possibility. I carry on. All right, so here's his definition, the second definition from paragraph 11 of Book 6, Chapter 2, and this one is on page 204. If its existence were after absolute non-existence, then its proceeding from the cause in this manner would be creation, ibda'an. This is the term we've seen again and again here for creation. It's also the term for creation in the Platiniana Arabica and the Liber de Causas. Ibda'an. I continue with Avicenna. And it would represent the highest mode of the giving of existence, because non-existence would have been utterly prevented, existence being fully empowered over it. So this is the real meaning of creation. Right here, ibda'an. This is the real sense of it. And he reaches back into the language of the Platiniana Arabica and the Liber de Causas for this. In paragraph 7 he then adds, quote, hence the whole in relation to the first cause is created. Alright, so this is the general question, why is there something rather than nothing? And the answer is, because the first cause created it. Its act, I carry on with Avicenna, its act of bringing into being that which comes to be from it would entirely rule out non-existence in the substances of things. Rather, it is an act of bringing into existence that absolutely prevents non-existence in things that bear perpetualness. This, then, is absolute creation. So, Avicenna, some people say, I pause for a moment, some people say that the first to explain a proper philosophical notion of creation was Thomas Aquinas. Well, that's not true. In fact, it's Avicenna, and you have in your readings that article by Pegas, where Pegas mentions that as well, that the first notion of creation, properly speaking in a philosophical account, is to be found in the Metaphysics of Avicenna. What we have elaborated here in this class so far is much more than what Pegas goes into in his article. Pegas points to it, but we are going into the text in much greater detail, looking at the precise vocabulary and seeing that Avicenna links it with that notion of creation that we found in the Platiniana Arabica and the Liber de Causas. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Avicenna believes that the theology of Aristotle, which is part of the Platiniana Arabica, is by Aristotle in some way. Let's go back to the text of Avicenna then. Quote, this then is absolute creation. And then he goes on, bringing into existence in the absolute sense is not just any kind of bringing into existence. I had the just there myself. And everything is originated from that one being the originator of it, since the originated is that which comes into being after not having been. And then, in paragraph 8, Avicenna concludes the chapter 3 of Book 8, writing the following, quote, the state of affairs that a thing possesses from itself precedes that which it has from another. He goes on, quote, if it has existence and necessity from another, then from itself it has non-existence and possibility. You've already seen that Aquinas picks up on this kind of language. We will see some more of that as well in the next video. Its non-existence was, we continue with Avicenna, its non-existence was prior to its existence, and its existence is posterior to non-existence, involving a priority and posterior in essence. What's Avicenna doing? Avicenna is stressing that this is creation ex nihilo, in the sense of absolutely nothing pre-existing. He's insisting upon that because, I think as we've already seen, earlier theological notions that had it that in the atomic notion of the kalam, then something would exist only when God gave it the accident of existence. And Avicenna is not doing that at all here. Because then there would be pre-existing entities of some kind to receive the accident of existence. He's rejecting that completely. We go on with Avicenna then and conclude, hence, in the case of everything other than the first, the one, its existence comes about after not having been a non-being that it itself deserves. We go on. 8.4, that is chapter 4 of book 8, recounts the necessity of the existence of the necessary being, and then Avicenna goes on to talk about its attributes. Here, I just want to call attention to some particularly interesting parts of his account before proceeding to book 9 and concluding our discussion of Avicenna. Paragraph 3, quote, the first has no quiddity other than his individual existence, inniyatihi. And paragraph 9, quote, the necessary existent is indicated in itself by the mind. There is no quiddity for the necessary existent other than its being the necessary existent. So I was very careful about this. Do we make an essence-existence distinction in the first? No. There is no quiddity for the necessary existent other than its being the necessary existent. In 8, then, he concludes, paragraph 8, he then concludes, writing, and I see I have a second version of the same slide. So I think I will edit this part out. 8.4 recounts the necessity of the existence of the necessary being, and this is a repeat as well. So I'm having a hard time. I'm editing this out.
Here.
At 8.4, paragraph 12, Avicenna continues, everything that has a quiddity is caused. The rest of the things other than the necessary existent have quiddities. The obvious conclusion, and it is these quiddities that in themselves are possible in existence, existence occurring to them externally. Paragraph 13 then, quote, the first hence has no quiddity. Those things possessing quiddities have existence emanate on them from him, namely the first cause. He is pure existence, with the condition of negating privation and all other description of him. Moreover, the rest of things possessing quiddities are possible, coming into existence through him. That's right, he's reaching back into the arguments of Book 1 on necessary and possible existent here. In chapter 5 of Book 8, Avicenna describes this material as, quote, a confirmation and a recapitulation of what has been previously discussed concerning the unity of the necessary existent and all his attributes by way of conclusion. All right, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I want to look at just a few paragraphs of this, and at paragraph 14 he summarizes what the chapter has accomplished as he sees it. Quote, it has become clear then that the first has no genus, no quiddity, no quality, no quantity, no where, no when, no equal, no partner, no contrary. May he be exalted and magnified. And that he has no definition, and that there is no demonstration for him. Rather, he is the demonstration of all things. Pause there for a moment. All right, so there's no demonstration of the first because a proper demonstration requires knowledge of the cause. So there can be a demonstration quia, but not propter quid. This can be a demonstration that the first exists, but we do not have the cause of the essence of the first available for us to know as such. So, because there is no cause of the essence of the first, other than the first itself. So there is no demonstration of him. So rather, he is the demonstration of all things. He is the proof that the other things exist. We carry on. Indeed, with Avicenna, indeed, there are for him only the clear evidential proofs. That is, there's going to be a demonstration quia that God exists. We carry on. It is evident that if you ascertain the truth about him, you will find that after the fact of his individual existence, he is only described by means of negating all similarities of him and affirming to him all relations. For all things are from him, and he shares nothing in common with what proceeds from him. He is the principle of all things, and he is not any of the things that are posterior to him. So, there's a clear distinction between the existence of the first and everything else. And everything else exists as a quiddity that is possible, and it's realized or necessitated by an emanative causality of agency or efficient causality, a creative causality that gives being. Okay, we'll now take a short break before proceeding to Book 9. After expounding some of the teachings there, I want to engage you in some thinking about the comparison of Avicenna and Aquinas on the notion of creation and the nature of being, in particular on the nature of the necessary being, which both Aquinas and Avicenna agree to be suitably characterized by the notion that it is pure being, ania macht esse purum. But we'll do that after a short break.